Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth podcast. Today, I have the honor and privilege of introducing Warren Coughlin to the show. Thank you so much, Warren, for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great to be here.
In a minute, Warren's going to help us understand a bit more about like how he helps folks. But in my experience, Warren's probably one of the smartest business coaches I've ever met. With a genuine passion for helping passionate entrepreneurs grow their businesses so they don't have to be sitting there playing whack-a-mole all day. And at some point, you're going to tell us what that means. But it also is about building an organization that can run without them, have some more fun, make more money, that type of thing. So Warren, thanks for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Cool. So can you just give us a quick Coles Notes summary, kind of like how you ended up into this coaching environment you're in, where your passion for entrepreneurship came from, and just a crash course on what brought you where you are now?
Sure. I'll do a crash course, but it's kind of weird in my case. The bio actually starts at birth because I was supposed to die. I was given zero chance of survival. I was the second person in history to live through this weird congenital defect. And when I discovered that, it kind of stirred in me this desire to do something with this gift I wasn't supposed to have.
Cool.
So I pursued a whole bunch of different paths. So I've got this weird eclectic background. I'm a recovering lawyer, pursuit of justice, maybe going to politics someday. I was a college professor, molding young minds. I was a serial entrepreneur. I was an actor and theater director, the transformative power of art and all of that. And it was really an entrepreneurship that it sang to me. I actually believe that entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful forces for positive social change. It's where we can really have an impact.
Hallelujah.
And so then when I got into that, then I sort of realized, a lot of entrepreneurs get into it because they're forced into it by circumstance, or they got some personal passion, or they got some technical skill, but not because they've studied business. Right. So they've actually left a lot of money on the table, a lot of stress, so they don't actually achieve the success they want to be able to have those impacts that make the world a better place. And so that's what got me into business coaching. Was here's an opportunity to actually help entrepreneurs do it better. And, I believe that if entrepreneurs succeed, then we all succeed.
Okay, so first of all, I couldn't agree more. At Intrigue, we talk about this idea that we have this obsession, a healthy obsession for helping entrepreneurs be entrepreneurially successful. So I really appreciate that because they're the backbones. They're the ones that put their houses on the lines, hire folks, support the, charities, soccer teams, whatever, and actually make the difference in the world they want to see, not just say it. They're not sitting on the sidelines. So that resonates big time with me, Warren. Thanks for saying that. So
Yeah,
just to get,
there's a line in the play, the play Rent. There's a great line that I always reference, and it says, "The opposite of war is not peace; it is creation." Or sorry, the opposite of war is not peace; it is creation.
Beautiful.
Because war is destruction, and creation is its antithesis. And
Yeah.
that's what entrepreneurs do: is they create, right? They create solutions, they create ideas, they create businesses, they create opportunities. So they are the antidote to the negative stuff.
I love it. So tell us, what's whack-a-mole mean?
Whack-a-mole is that game in a fair where you're just sitting there with a mallet waiting for something to pop up and then hitting it.
Right.
And so in entrepreneurship, what that is you're always reacting to something else. It's like, I don't know what's going to pop up or where, but I'm ready just to smack it. And so you're responding to
I've been
what
polishing my whacker.
Yeah. I'm just like this all the time. And it keeps you from actually thinking about what you want to do and where you want to go. If you're just always waiting for something to pop up that you need to deal with, you're never going to be dealing with the things that you want to deal with. And so it actually keeps you from being strategic and proactive and in control.
Cool. So, there's obviously a ton of layers to how you become proactive. But we were going to touch on like two topics within that massive spectrum of whatever we want to talk about when it comes to business leadership and everything between. The first one you mentioned, and especially, with the audience here being a bunch of folks in the landscape industry, green industry, and the whole focus of this podcast is to help people break through growth constraints they're experiencing within their business as leaders and entrepreneurs. You have a passion for this idea around high performance teams. Whether it's creating a culture of high performance, whether it's, sinking, training, investing resources into developing people, everything that around this idea of high performance. So can you just give us a quick understanding from your point of view, what does a high performance team or culture look like? And then we'll get into like how people can start, making it happen.
Sure. So let's actually distinguish it from what it's not. Because when people talk about culture, people talk about culture a lot, right? But it gets often misunderstood. And there's a distinction between a high performance culture and a nice culture. And a lot of people have bought into the idea of building a nice culture, right? We have the foosball table, we have barbecues on Friday afternoon, we, give people massages or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with those things, like
Unless you like to get things done.
Yeah. So a high performance culture is more like a high performance team. Pick your sport, right? It's like people who play at a really high level. And a high performance culture is one that, yes, provides things to the team that they benefit, good pay, good job, good working conditions, all that kind of stuff, maybe the massage and foosball table. But there's also a high level of expectation. People perform when there's an expectation of them. And the interesting thing is, like, high performers like to play with high performers. Nobody
Yeah,
likes to be on
the
the
Golden
line.
State Warriors, right? Everybody wants to be
Yeah.
the Golden State Warrior because all the best people go there.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be on the court with somebody who's a slacker,
Yeah.
right? It makes the game not fun. That's the point that gets missed. A lot of people always think about this as just, it's about driving money and all that. But it's actually, we're all in this because we want to make our lives better. The people that work for you are in it because they want to make their lives better. So high performers want to play the game with other high performers because it's just more fun.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by a high performance culture. It's like people who want to do great work, deliver a great experience for clients, are challenged, like to push themselves a little bit, and like to participate in the rewards of having done an excellent job. They like to win.
That's cool. So then what does somebody do? Like, staffing being this constraint within the landscape industry, and people have talked about it for years and intensified the last 2 or 3. We'll see if it, eases up, but it's still a thing, whether it's recruiting new folks or growing people so that they stay for a long period of time, developing leaders so that you don't have to be doing everything day to day. Where does someone start if they want to go down this journey of a high performance culture?
The first thing is, to be analytical about it, is to kind of like define what that means for you. High performance differs by organization, right? Like, so some organizations, if they're all about speed, then high performance is going to be about how you work at quality with speed. Others are going to be more around the kind of experience that customers have, or about creativity or something like that. So you got to define for yourself what high performance looks like. Like, I grew up, I'm not sure if your audience, I'm older than your average bear.
I don't know about that. You're good. You're good.
I grew up in Edmonton during the heyday of the Edmonton Oilers hockey team when Wayne Gretzky was there. And, they built a system centered around this guy Gretzky, but it was an offensive juggernaut, right? And so they actually got rid of really high quality players, but who just didn't fit that system.
Mm-hmm.
And so really defining for yourself what that distinction and what that high performances look like will help you then recruit the right people. So that's the first step, is first defining it, and then you've got to recruit to that piece, and be very, very explicit about what kind of folks you want. And that's where it's hard, right? Especially when there's a shrinking labor market or a constrained labor market. So you have to recruit really thoughtfully, carefully, put people through their paces. But that can be challenging because, I've had clients who said, I found somebody great. We were going to do the third interview and they got a job with somebody else. So one of the things is to actually have a recruitment process that accelerates that. One of the things I have all my clients do in recruitment is to do group interviews. So you take all your top candidates and you bring them in at once. Instead of scheduling, I'm busy because I got a bunch of work, so I'm seeing Bob on Monday at 3 and somebody else on Thursday at 5, and then I can't really remember because there were 4 days in between, so I got to bring them back again the next week. And by that time, the people are bored and they've gone on to another job. Right. Whereas if you can screen people like with 10-minute phone interviews first, then bring just your top candidates in for a 1 hour, 1.5 hour group interview, you're going to know within that hour and a half who the top performers are.
Yeah. Okay.
And that'll help you to accelerate your recruitment.
when it comes to the recruitment process, some folks have got it dialed in terms of steady flow of applications here and there, and they've got candidates to work from. But if someone is like not in a position where they've got candidate flow, do you have any recommendations on how they can kick up that recruitment process so they're getting people through the front door to start?
Yeah, there's, I'm gonna sound like, Entrepreneur Magazine. Here's the three keys to recruitment. Like, there's
Entrepreneur
nothing new on
Magazine's a good magazine,
there.
man. It's all good.
Yeah, there's nothing new on, like, it's doing the work. So the first thing is to cast your net wide. Like, what most people do is they don't want to get inundated by resumes, and so they actually recruit narrowly because they're so busy they don't want to have to review 150 resumes. So the first thing is you got to cast your net as wide as possible. So how do you do that? Advertise in Indeed, put things up on LinkedIn, ask your current staff for recommendations to others, give them the job descriptions and ad, distribute it to their networks, give them some incentives to help do that. Go on social media.
Can you give
And
us an example of a referral incentive that you've seen in one of your clients' businesses?
there can be different versions. I've seen cash incentives. I've seen time off incentives. I've seen use of equipment or truck kind of incentive, dinner out with your spouse. Like, it's a lot of incentives. People, again, get lazy on the incentive piece. They just think, I'm going to do one thing that I think will work. But you need to know who your team is. Like, if you have a, I don't know, let's say you got a crew of people who, they're all into baseball, say,
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, give them tickets to a major league game or something if they bring the successful person and the successful candidate gets to go with them.
Yeah, so at Intrigue, we give 3 grand away for a successful candidate coming on board, and
Yeah,
it's
that's great.
it's $500 for them joining the team. Then it's $1,500 if they make it 6 months, and then the extra 1,000 if they make it a year.
Yep. Now again, you look at your culture. This isn't a business context, but it's about psychology. There was this really interesting experiment done I'm going to get it wrong, it's either Norway or Denmark. And they were trying to figure out where to put nuclear waste.
Hmm.
And they went, because everyone gets powered by nuclear energy. Nuclear energy produces waste. Where do you put it? And so they actually went to this one region of the country and said, just as a matter of civic responsibility and paying back, would you be willing to, have a waste facility in your community or in your area? And something like 60% of the voters said yes. They went to another part of the country and they actually offered an incentive. And what happened was people actually went, well, is it worth it?
Hmm.
And so the people who accepted were actually way less. So one of the things that's interesting is if you can build a high performance culture, one of the things that happens is, again, people want to play with high performers. If you say, hey, we're looking for high performers, we don't want to bring anybody in here who's going to bring us down. Who do you know? They'll actually look because they want to bring on the team somebody that
Right.
they really like.
All right. So then we
The
define.
incentive you offer is a good one. Like, I'm not in any way knocking
No, no,
that,
it's fine.
but it's just knowing who your team is and saying what's the thing that's going to inspire them. Sometimes paying people off, for lack of a better term, they do a calculation, right? And they say, is my relationship with that person worth the money that I'm gonna get? And maybe not.
Either way, so we
Yeah.
recruiting with a wide net is important. So then you've got your team in there. You mentioned the idea of having to sift through 150 resumes. Do you have any tips for folks when they're looking at intakes on how they can streamline their approach? They're not having to look at 150 resumes because resumes are all a
Yes.
bunch of sales sheets.
Yep. So there's a couple of tools. So now I'll give you the downside of it. Like, some people say we lose candidates doing this because we make them do work. But one of the ways to just get rid of the tire kickers is you actually make somebody do something before you even look at their resume. So I've used an application form that's really simple, but it just asks some really interesting questions that reveal something about the person. But the basic point is they actually have to do something to get further in. There's also a tool called Talent Sorter, which actually you can actually qualify the kind of the personal qualities that you're looking for. People actually answer a survey and you can set the level that says, I want only to see people who match 80% of what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
And
that's
you'll
cool.
only be served up the resumes of those that meet that qualification. So either of those conditions will screen out all the tire kickers. So you'll then reduce the number of resumes you have to review.
Well, and what kind of work or do you make someone do in that application? Just to give an example, so people understand what you mean.
Well, it's just filling it out and sending it in. Like, tire kickers won't even do that. So the questions, it's just a 2-page application form. For instance, it'll say something like, tell me about your favorite supervisor. Why were they your favorite supervisor? That tells you how they like to be managed.
Sure, that's cool.
Tell me about the funniest thing that's ever happened to you at work. There's some anecdotal research. This isn't statistically validated, but anecdotally, people who actually describe something that happened to them tend to be higher performers than someone who describes something funny that happened to someone else.
Oh, that's
Someone,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, because they got they're good in their own skin to make fun of themselves and share it.
Yeah,
Versus saying
exactly.
I saw somebody trip and fall and it was like Three Stooges and I laughed my ass off. I mean, not to say it's not funny, but I just that's a neat anecdotal kind of perspective. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've got your people in there, you've defined your team. What are some of the key things people need to look for in terms of like things they need to be doing on a day-to-day basis as a leader to create that high performance culture, the high performance team?
One piece is to really make sure you've got clear values that drive the organization. And by that, I don't mean values that hang on a wall and we talk about once a year, but in all performance-based discussions, recognition-based conversations, they tie back to the values, and those values have clear behavioral expectations. So one of my clients in landscaping, for instance, the first behavior under their value is we show up on time. And that's like, no kidding, no fooling. Your second day on the job, if you're 2 minutes late, there's a conversation about that.
Right.
This is who we are, right? So, and there's no anger, there's no discipline about it. It's just a constant conversation about this is who we are and how we behave.
Yeah, and if you're
And
late
when
7 times in 30 days, then you're not like us, and that's okay. So you can go be late somewhere else.
go be an A performer somewhere else because
Yeah,
you're not an A performer for us,
yeah,
right?
that's not who
And
we are.
so values translate into standards. And maybe, for people who feel values language is too touchy-feely, the other way of talking about it is standards, right? What are our standards here? And you have to adhere to them.
So
And
when
that
it,
the hard,
go, keep going,
sorry,
keep
go
going.
ahead.
No, no, please.
Well, the hard piece, right, when you're in a tight labor market is, oh my God, if I give this, if I have to have this performance conversation with someone, they might quit on me.
Hmm.
And so then people hold back and then they allow this stuff to happen. But here's the rule. Good performers lead because bad performers are allowed to stay.
Hmm.
Because I don't want to play on a team with crappy people. If the crappy people are allowed to stay, I'm going to go look somewhere else. So you're better off making sure you hold people to those standards, even if it means losing some people, than you are indulging it. And the other trick of this is people actually, most people actually like to be held to a higher standard.
Yeah, they
When
like
they
to be
can
pushed.
actually show what they're capable of, and it's recognized, that's the second piece. This isn't all about giving people shit. It's actually recognizing them when they do excellent, when they achieve excellence. If you think about who your average laborer is, they probably haven't, I'm being somewhat stereotypical, but, as a general characterization, they're not people who get lots of praise during their school years for high academic performance and all that kind of stuff. And so when you're the leader who actually calls them out for excellence,
Hmm.
this is like a big freaking deal.
Yeah, that's cool. So
And you got to think about it from the life experience. I had a client once where he had this experience. She was like, oh, they're not going to care what I think. She was this really humble leader, and I went, are you kidding me? Right when she said this person walked by her office, this young guy who looked after their IT. And I said, are you kidding? And I knew something he'd done just the day before. I said, if you go out there and say to him, you saved our bacon when you did that, and that helped us preserve some clients, and you did a great job, I appreciate. You know what that guy's going to do? He was a 22-year-old kid. He's going to go home and he's going to phone his mom. And he's going to say, Mom, do you know what the boss said to me today? And she's going to go, oh, dear, I am so proud of you. That's the real life impact of being a great leader, right? It isn't just, oh, I did a good job. That person is going to have something that they're going to be able to talk about in their relationships with other people that matter. They're going to raise their esteem. You give somebody that gift,
yeah, that's cool.
they're
It
going to
was
be loyal to you.
it was a neat bit. It was what's his name? Marshall. Can't remember his first name. Big coach. What's his name?
Oh, I know what you mean. Sorry.
Marshall
I was
Goldsmith.
looking.
That's who it is.
Yes.
Anyway, he talks about the brag call where you call somebody in the evening. Like when do you ever get a call from your boss in the evening? It's good news, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you wait till whatever 7 o'clock, 7:30, and you call somebody up on their cell phone and you just say, hey, I just want to call and let you know that I was bragging about you to somebody else today because of this X, Y, and Z thing you did. And I just want to let you know I really appreciate it. That's it. Have a great night. Like that goes a long way, man. To your point, that stuff is
Yeah.
what makes people
And if
tick.
you have a leader, if you're big enough that you have a leadership team, one of the things you should do in your leadership meetings is have conversations about who's doing a great job. Because then, even if you receive it from your direct boss, if somebody else from the organization comes over and says, hey, I heard you did this amazing thing, or, the client was really happy what you did, then it's like, people are talking about me behind my back for good things.
Yeah, yeah. And what they create pronoia.
Yeah.
Who's all talking good about me, right? That's really cool. So going back to this idea of core values and standards. So, core values, some people, there's arguments, 3, 4, 5 to 7, 8's too many, 10's way too many, whatever. When it comes to standards, is it the same? Like, how do those two kind of play together or are they fully synonymous and it's just the way that you position it?
Yeah, I think they're kind of synonymous. The value is the articulation, and then the standards are the behaviors.
Right.
So you need to have both of them. So under a value, you may have 3 or 4 standards.
Right.
Right. And so there's sort of a cascading thing. You might have 3 to 5 values, but then you're going to have really specific behaviors under each of them. And then those are the things that you really talk about.
Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, can you just give us an example of a client that you have or experience that has got a core value and a standard associated to it?
Um, Pretty much all of them. It's like being on time, having return times, cleanliness of truck, maintenance of materials, making sure there's certain clients I have that the foreman will have a script, when they arrive on site the first time, making sure you deliver that
Oh, cool.
script.
So the customer experience is consistent.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So then what's one last thing, maybe like a hidden gem around high performance culture that you can give somebody a bit of a tidbit on? Like maybe they're on the journey, they've been there, they're close, they feel like they're close. Like what's one thing maybe out of your bag of tricks over years of experience helping entrepreneurs that people might not think of when it comes to high performance teams?
Um, the one that comes first to mind is sort of a negative one, but a lot of people do, is to fire on culture. Like let everybody know that this person, even if they were good, like someone might be like they might be technically good, but they were poisonous to the culture, they're gone.
Mm-hmm. So
And that lets everybody know, because again, culture gets too many people talk about it in these really touchy feely terms. But when you actually can tie it to, no, this is about performance, this is about result, like that thing endangered a client relationship, that thing endangered another person's safety, for instance.
right.
Those are things we don't tolerate.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I guess that's another thing in this industry, putting safety first is a really big deal. I don't know if there's a story about there's an aluminum company. So this isn't landscaping, but it was a publicly traded company. They brought in a new CEO, and there was lots of labor strife, and the stock value was down. And he came in, and everyone thought he was going to start firing people and changing the marketing and the product mix. First thing he did was create safety initiatives.
Yeah.
And
Productivity went through the roof.
Stock value actually crashed for a while, but then the performance of the business started to skyrocket, and the workers actually built a statue of the guy out of the aluminum. And it was because he demonstrated to them that he cared about their well-being.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that, if you want to build a high performance culture, yes, have the vision and the values and all that kind of stuff, but show them that you care about who they are, and that will be transformative.
It's cool you say that too, because we're maybe this is the 10th episode or something like that, and talking to associations across Canada and the US, and asking about the bright spot members in their associations, like who's really kicking butt, what are they doing? And it's all been two things: safety and training. Leaders that focus on safety and training build teams that want to crush.
Now, focus on safety. Can I do just one little bit on that?
Yeah.
So one of the things, and this is part of culture. Again, culture isn't just values. Culture is actually the systems, the incentives, and the signals that reveal the values. So I had a client that this was the case. Their number one value was safety, but guess how project managers were bonused on hitting production targets?
Right.
The foreman, the only sheets they had to put in were production target sheets. So their incentives and their systems communicated to everybody that productivity was the number one value, even though their stated value was safety. And the stated value was true. They actually had a work or die on the job. And so the owner of the business was passionate about safety. But it's not enough just to say that and talk about it. If people get incentives that are different from what you're saying is important, people will follow the incentive.
Yeah.
And so you've got to really look to make sure your systems and your bonusing structure and all that kind of stuff supports the values that you say are important.
Yeah, that's cool, man. All right, so we've got high performance teams, and then the other thing you want to mention was around this idea of customer obsession, customer experience, and kind of being like customer obsessed. So first of all, like, what does that even mean? Like, everybody's got customers, we're all focused on them. That's what the company does every day. We serve customers. What is like a customer obsession or customer experience obsession, look like? What does that mean?
It means looking at everything you do through the customer's eyes. A lot of people, and the reason it's so important is particularly in tougher economic times where there's a competitive landscape, customers are going to choose on a few different criteria, right? It's either quality or price or something else. Your customer experience is the thing that's going to distinguish you from everyone else. And to use a really simple, if you get on an airplane and the food tray is broken, you're not nervous just because the food tray is broken.
Right.
Right.
What else
You're
is
nervous because what else isn't being looked after?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you walk
So
into a restaurant and see a dirty bathroom, you think the kitchen's gross.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a crew who shows up 10 minutes late, and let's say you serve a high-end market, they're used to, having certain performance standards in the work they do. And what are they going to think? Oh, this is just like all those other crappy contractors I've dealt with in my life who I can't rely on because they're late. So your first experience with them out of the gate, you just destroyed your credibility.
And then the halo effect ensues.
Yeah. And so then you're pushing people. So I may as well just decide on price then.
Well, and I mean, and it could even, to your point, start from like the initial inquiry, right? Like, how long does it take you to get back to somebody when they're asking for your service to begin with?
Yeah. And do you show up, do you show up on time for the first meeting with them? Mm-hmm. Do you get the proposal back to them? Are your drawings accurate? Like all that stuff communicates things to the customer. And so when you're customer obsessed, and for most people in this industry, there's a certain percentage of business that comes through your marketing and a certain percentage that comes from referrals.
Sure.
Referrals are always cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
And so the more you can get, so the more you can get referrals, the better. So your customer experience isn't just a customer experience thing. It is a marketing investment, right? Because you're creating a competitive distinction. And if people kind of go, wow, these people are different from everybody else. So what does different mean? It doesn't have to be expensive, right? It can be super simple things. Like I've got clients who will, the day before the job starts, send an email with photos and bios of the people who are going to be on the job site.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? Like how does that cost you anything? No, you spend a little bit of time, getting that stuff designed by folks like you, right? And it gets sent over. Nice. So when these big burly guys show up at the door and the spouse
is there, Dave, and there's Liz.
Yeah. How's your kid, right? And they show up on time. And then there's a script that tells me exactly what's going to happen over the course of the day. At the end of the day, they take 2 minutes to say, this is the status of the job. And tomorrow we're going to be back at this time to do this. Then when my spouse comes home at the end of the day, I can say exactly what's happening, what the progress is.
Yeah.
Right. It's just cool. A little crap like that.
Well, and it was a one client we had, and they implemented putting a Lindt chocolate on the doorstep with a note of the kind of status update and when we're going to come back, like what's our next arrival date. And like the pictures on social media alone of people being like, check out this landscape company and what they're doing with us. Like every day at the end of their day, they drop a Lindt chocolate with a note about when they're coming back and what happened. And it's like three sentences, like it is not, a big, huge anything, and a little Lindt chocolate, right?
I had a moving company that's the one investment he did was, they always lay runners down when they do it. He laid a red carpet down at the front.
Perfect.
Like, again, it doesn't cost any more.
No.
But just do something that distinguishes you so that people then talk about it. And the last thing I'll say is how you finish is really important. Like, and in a lot of people,
Hey-o.
it's, what's that?
Sorry, nothing. I'm just making fun.
Oh.
Story of my life, Warren. Anyway, go ahead.
I won't go there.
Yeah.
Um, that the last experience they have, we always want to rush off to the next job. Let's get it finished up so we can move on to the next job.
Finish the day, whatever.
I
Get
don't
home.
remember. Again, just like the story I told about the kid in the workforce, you got to think about the experience of the customer. What happens after you leave? Hey, Mary, how was I knew you were getting your yard done. How did it go? What's the last thing that happened? Really great. Actually, before the crew left, they did this, they cleaned everything up, everything looks great, and they gave us blah, blah, whatever blah, blah happens to be for you.
Yeah.
If the last experience they have is amazing, so the first experience has to be great. The last experience has to be great. The stuff in the middle will be forgiven if both those things are done, if as long as the stuff in the middle isn't too
Yeah, no,
outrageous.
that's cool. Well, and I mean, like, versus someone being like, talking to their neighbor and they're like, well, are they done? They're like, I'm not sure actually if they're finished. I think they're finished. I'm not sure. Like, because they just left.
Yeah.
One little
Yeah, so
customer
make sure they
interaction can
come.
go a long, long way. So then,
And for large, sorry, go ahead.
no, please, for large, go.
Well, for larger things, there's an initiative. I'm not sure if you guys have done this kind of thing in the past, but to actually, if it's a big job, now this costs a little bit of money, but in terms of getting referrals, you could host the pool opening party for your customer, pay to have it catered,
Oh yeah,
invite all
awesome.
their friends over, right? And it's on you. We're just so proud, the work we did, the design you chose is so excellent. This is just one of our showcase jobs. We're so thrilled with it. We'd like to have this event for you. And then, you have some business cards out on the tables, and everybody who comes to the party knows you and
That
wants
might
to
go
talk to you.
well.
Yeah.
That might go well. And I heard that neighbors have similar budgets typically when
Yeah.
in a neighborhood. So hosting a pool party for a pool company is a really badass idea, Warren. I think that's a nugget anybody from listening to this can take into consideration, or even a backyard party, backyard barbecue, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So quick one to wrap up and giving somebody like a full takeaway on this customer experience obsession. How do I figure out where to spend my time? Like, do you have any tips on how we can like
Yes.
get an idea of where customers are being interacted with and what we can start doing with it? Like, how do you start that?
So it's called customer experience journey mapping. So basically what you do is you take a piece of paper out and you just identify every single touch point the customer has with your company from the moment they see your Google ad through to the completion of the job. And at every one of those spots, you sort of list what the experience is like for them. Like, is it consistent? Is it inconsistent? Like, you got to be really self-critical on this. Sometimes we're late, sometimes we're not. Our papers are kind of tattered or they're clean, whatever. Like, go through every piece of it. And then you have to circle the ones that I call magical moments, right? The ones that are really determinative for the client, the ones that really influence them.
Cool.
And then
Like
you
the
gather
first
your
day on
team.
site, as an example.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you gather your team or smart folks like you and say, and we brainstorm, how could we make this experience better? And aligned with the brand. If you say your brand is all about excellence, or your brand is all about communication, or your brand is all about creativity, what are you going to do
To bring it
at
to
that
life.
magic moment to reinforce that brand? And you got to just let your brain go wild.
Yeah, that's cool.
And you will absolutely come up with stuff.
Yeah, well, and I
And
love
then
it too because it's already happening. So you're not asking what should we do, you're asking how can we make it better,
yeah.
which is a lot of fun, especially to get your team involved, right? Which is another great way to get people engaged.
Yeah. And
Which
then
then
then the last piece of it is to ask if there are any other touch points we could have. Like, maybe
oh,
there's a
cool.
communication piece, right?
That
Like,
could make it all better.
yeah, yeah. Maybe there's just gee, we find people get a little around here. We start to get a lot of inquiries about when the job is going to happen. So that's telling us that we need a communication piece in there to give an update on the job.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's common, it's consistent, which is
Yeah.
cool too, because then you get people brainstorming within your group environment, engaging them on a high performance team, which circles back to this whole idea around creating a culture of high performance, having people use their brains to make the business better. Because I think one of the coolest things I've heard around as a leader, it's not our job to have all the answers. It's our job to ask the right questions, right?
Mhm.
And get our people, using their brains, and so we can help demonstrate through our actions that we care about what they think and how they believe the business should operate.
Well,
So
frontline people have so much wisdom and insight that
they're the
if you're not
closest to it
tapping
all,
into, oh
right?
yeah.
Okay, so one resource that you would share with folks, like author, book, speaker, podcast that you think, as an entrepreneur leader, they should, tap into, what would one resource be?
Um, my favorite podcast, it's not purely entrepreneurial, but it's called The Knowledge Project.
The
And it's
Knowledge
all
Project.
about how people think and how they make decisions. He's got really, really smart people. And so if you want to think about decision making, and it's not always about business, but often it is.
Mm.
But then also these really successful people and how they take those same values and disciplines and apply it in their personal lives as well as their business lives. I find it just a fascinating podcast.
The Knowledge Project.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, thanks, man, for sharing your insights on high performance teams and cultures, and the idea around this, like, building a business centered around the customer experience. I think that can go a really long way for folks. If someone wants to get in touch with you, Warren, what's the best way for them to do that?
Best spot is my website, warrencoghlin.com. Coughlin is spelled Coughlin.com.
Very cool, man. And we'll put it in the summary for sure anywhere we post this thing. Thanks everybody for getting through this awesome podcast with Warren. Really appreciate all the people listening. Warren, thank you again for doing this, my man.
Thank you.
The I Am Landscape Growth Podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcasts.